Okay, if everyone could take a seat. So we've started to look at what our self-interest is. My self-interest is lunch. We have to get to lunch in an hour, okay? I'll get in trouble if you're late, I'm told. So, we're starting to get a sense of what our self-interest is. What are the things that drive us? What I want you now to do is something that on a larger scale is known as a 1-to-1. This is the radical act of meeting a person face to face. Doesn't sound very radical, but in community life, it can be quite radical, and it can be something that we forget to do. We sit in our offices and we create programs, and we try to decide if the community would rather have a barbecue or an ice cream. And what we sometimes need to do, I'm not sure it would solve that particular crisis, but sometimes we need to put the people before the program. It's quite a crucial concept. The people before the program. Sorry? Is it the meat then? So when we create programs, quite often it's what we as an individual or we as a community organizing group think the community need. What we're going to start to explore is how do we create relationships with people that help us really understand what it is that they need and what it is that they want. So what I want you to do is find someone to talk to, find a partner, and for the next 10 minutes we're going to do something called a 1-to-1. I want you each to talk about one person who has inspired you to want to do things in a particular way. What have they motivated you? What has inspired you? What is it that they do that you want to be like or to create or whatever? Someone who has inspired you. I want you to tell your partner about them. You can ask questions. And then I want you to swap over and listen to your partner. You could talk to someone that you've come with, that you know, if you think that's going to be a useful way of continuing to work when you go home. Or you might want to sit with someone that you don't know, create a new relationship, create a new link to power, right? Who is in the room who might be useful for you, who might have a connection to a program or a community or an institution that might be useful. Everyone's going to all jump on one person maybe, but... and the point of this exercise is to start to really listen to one another, okay? When we talk to someone who is very similar to us, we don't necessarily learn, right? When we talk to someone who's very similar to us, they reaffirm what we already know. The Jewish idea of hevrota, of study in pairs, is that if you study with someone who disagrees with you, who's different to you, you're much more likely to learn something. Because when we hear something different to us, it challenges us, it makes us think things clearer and newer and differently, and to express ourselves with fresh thoughts. So you can decide whether you're going to speak to a friend or someone who you don't know, and you've got 5 minutes to really hear each other talking about a person who's inspired you to do what you do or to be who you are, okay? Find your friend or new friend. talk. Time to finish up our storytelling. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. Okay, only the translators can hear me. Shh. I'm really excited that you all had so much to share. It means you've all had some incredible role models and mentors and people that have inspired you, which is wonderful. This, of course, was just a tiny taste of what it means to do a one-to-one. I said this was a radical act. Partly it's radical because it's an opportunity for us to really acknowledge each other as B'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. Right? When you sit opposite a person and you really listen to their story, it's not a transactional relationship where they pay you for membership and you offer a service. Burial, right, a burial service. You really can't do a one-to-one by the time you get to burial. It's definitely too late. Okay. We need to have the one-to-ones well before. I mean, actually, it's a very interesting point you raise, because quite often, for me, the first opportunity that I have to engage with a person on their Jewish journey is when they have lost someone, right? When the person has died in their family, and suddenly they're coming to me for their Judaism. People often say to me, it must be really difficult doing funerals and dealing with death. Actually, it's a huge privilege, and it is, sadly, also an opportunity, right? You have an opportunity to make someone's engagement with their Jewish life become meaningful at a time that's difficult. And death, ironically, is one of those things that Judaism does very, very well on the whole. Right? We're good at death. We know how to do mourning. A lot of the non-Jewish world in the UK, anyway, when somebody dies, you might have one day off work to deal with the paperwork. Then you go back to work. 2 or 3 weeks later, there's a funeral. And then the next day, you're back at work again. Jews take a full week, traditionally, and hopefully even today. I think it's really important that we do this well, to really feel that pain, to deal with the grief. It's very real. It's very difficult to throw soil into a grave because it's meant to be difficult. It's meant to be painful. Someone has been ripped out of our lives, and we want to honor that. And to feel that pain is part of the process, because then we can get on with living again. So when people come into our lives around these difficult situations like death and mourning, it's an opportunity to help them find meaning through that difficult situation that then connects them back into their Judaism. So I don't want us to be dismissive of those people who just pay their money for burial, because they also present opportunities, right? And they also have a right to be part of the community when it's time, and when we can show them what the community has to offer. So the idea of a one-to-one is to take this radical step of really listening to a person and understanding what motivates them. Ask them what the milestones were on their journey to where they are now. Ask them who inspires them. Ask them what the difficulties have been. Try to really understand what they care about. Because when you hear from a person what they care about, you can understand what it is that they're going to care about in your community and are going to come to you for. The UK citizens who teach a lot of this stuff say that a one-to-one should take no longer than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. Maybe coffee is better in Prague than tea, but in England it's a cup of tea. So this isn't something that should take 2 or 3 hours with each person. It's 30 to 40 minutes, the time it takes to drink a cup of tea, have a piece of cake, to really get to the core of what motivates a person. And why? Here's a case study example from, New York. So it's the piece by Michael Green. Whoever doesn't have the translations. And it's an example of how one-to-ones really transformed a new rabbi's experience in his community. Would someone like to read it in the Czech for us? Someone whose Czech is better than mine. Which is everybody.
This one organizing for
Michael.
Jeden rabínský asistent začínal v New Yorku v nové komunitě a první věc, kterou udělal, bylo, že se sešel se 100 lidmi na individuální pohovor. Jako pozorovatel také chodil na jiná setkání a aktivity. Ale to, co mu dalo o jeho kongregaci nejvíce informací, byl prostý fakt, že strávil 100 večerů v domech kongregantů a mluvil s nimi tváří v tvář. Jeho kongreganti měli možnost ho poznat a on měl možnost poznat je. Poznali se lépe, než většina kongregantů zná své rabíny i po mnoha letech. Když pak mluvil v synagoze k lidem, mluvil o jejich skutečných problémech a starostech, nikoliv o obecných věcech. Ve svých promluvách nemluvil o žádných konkrétních lidech. Nebylo to třeba. Lidé věděli, že mluví přímo k nim díky osobním setkáním, která s nimi absolvoval. Mluvil k nim a s nimi.
Thank you. Okay. When I began my job nearly 4 years ago, it was a completely new post. For those who didn't hear earlier, I'm the community educator for Reform Judaism in the UK. So I work with 42 communities from Scotland down to Cornwall, which is in the far south of England, Wales, the whole of the UK. We don't have anywhere in Northern Ireland, but we'd like to. And we really hope Scotland doesn't leave. It's an opportunity when you start a new job. It's harder when you've been in a post for a while, but it's not impossible. When you start a new post, it's often unclear what you're supposed to do, how you're going to impact. So it was a huge opportunity for me that I could basically spend the first 3 or 4 months listening. I traveled around our communities. I sat with the educators, I sat with the rabbis, I sat with the lay leaders, and I heard their stories. I heard about why they cared about their communities. And the question I asked every single one of them was, what is the thing you're proudest in your community? What I asked all of you this morning. And what's the thing that you struggle most with? And once I knew from across the communities the thing they were proudest with and the thing they struggled most with, first of all, I could respond and understand what the community's needs really were, not from just one voice in each community, but a variety. But it also meant that when Wimbledon was struggling to decide what its teenage program post-B'nai Mitzvah should look like, and I know that the thing that Edgeware is proudest of is its post-B'nai Mitzvah teenage program, I can bring that relationship together. And Edgeware can help Wimbledon to grow its teenage program because that's what they're good at and what they're not good at. When you understand what people's needs and wants, strengths and weaknesses are, they can work better together. We don't do very well in the Jewish community at resource sharing. We often live in our little community bubbles, trying to make sure that we're offering the best that we can offer. I'm not sure that's very good for the long-term Jewish future, because actually we can learn from one another, we can all do better together, and if there's something that I'm good at or I'm bad at and you're good at or you're struggling at, we can share that knowledge and do better learning about it together, and speaking to everybody's strengths. In London particularly, we have a problem that there's a huge concentration, even of just Reform synagogues, all within 2 or 3 miles of each other. So they're all competing for the same bunch of people. But actually, they all have unique things that are special about them that people will choose them for. Choice is a good thing, but we also have to find ways of collaborating together, of resource sharing. The community isn't growing, let's be honest. On the whole, communities are either static or shrinking. And although there is potential for growth, we have to be realistic in the long term that working together to understand how we use strengths and weaknesses is going to be better for the Jewish people rather than just better for my personal or my institution's financial interests right now. I think if we can focus on what's best for the Jewish people holistically, it's a much greater derech eretz and all that sort of thing. When you leave here today, I want you to have a plan. And part of that plan is thinking about who will be the most important people for you to go and do a one-to-one with. So right now, I just want you to take 2 minutes to write down 5 names of the 5 most important people for you to really understand and know and have a personal relationship with. Who has relational power for you? If you were able to influence this person, it might be someone that you don't like, right? It might be someone you have never met but would like to meet. Who is the person that if you were in relationship with them, you could affect power more realistically? Okay? Who do you need to be in relationship with that you're not? Or who do you want to be in better relationship with by really hearing them and understanding them? 5 names of potentially. It might be someone you know, but you need to know more. And it might be someone that you don't know yet at all. Ideally, you need to know who they are, even if you don't know them. It's not just a fantasy person. The Jew with all the money who controls the media. I want to meet them, but I don't know who it is yet. Is anyone struggling to think of more than one person? Okay, so tomorrow, those are the names of the people that you're going to seek out, track down, find, and take them out for coffee. Okay? You're going to take them out for coffee, and in the first instance, no, I'm not, she says, don't make me do it. In the first instance, you want to try and understand their self-interest. What motivates them? What excites them? What has brought them to this point in their role, in their life? And you also need to think through how it is that they will leverage institutional power for you. Okay, so as we said at the beginning, power is a neutral word. This isn't about making sure that you speak to the guy right at the top of the federation or the girl right at the top of the federation. This isn't about, making sure that you're talking to your local political leader, although it might be. Sometimes those are important people to access too. It might be speaking to a parent in your congregation or in your school who's somehow, they want to give, but they don't know how to. So sitting down with them and understanding what it is that motivates them and understanding what it is that they want to get out of giving, understanding their self-interest so that they can be part of, not just for me, but also giving to the whole, back to the Hillel quote, is the point, really, of the one-to-one. And then you're going to store them away, right? You've built a relationship because you've had coffee, you've shared a bit of cake, or ice cream. I'm going for ice cream. And that relationship becomes part of your toolkit, of a person you can go to because they know that you know them, of a person you can call on and that you can work with to create change, to have power with them. As we heard from the case study in New York, it might be that you need to take a month or 3 months to just sit and listen to people before even deciding what change looks like. Rather than sitting in our offices and trying to imagine what the best possible program could be, we have to meet the people first. The people come before the program. And when we put the people before the program, we will create that which is wanted and needed and powerful. And just an example from Torah, because there's some good stuff in there. If we go to Exodus 32, there are 2 Exodus texts in your pack. This one's Exodus 32. Do you need one? You have one? Oh, yeah. Again, does someone want to read the check for us? Or the Hebrew, if someone wants to read the Hebrew, and everyone else can read the check. Who hasn't read yet? Most of you. Tak.
Šmot Exodus 18, 13, 23. Máš to?
Mám to, jo.
Jo. Exodus 32, 7, 14. Promluvil Hospodin k Možíšovi, sestup dolů, tvůj lid, který si vyvedl z egyptské země, se vrhá do zkázy. 8. Brzy uhnuli z cesty, kterou jsem jim přikázal. Odlil si trochu bička a klaní se mu, obětají mu a říkají, to je tvůj Bůh Izraeli, který tě vyvedl z egyptské země. 9. Hospodin dále Mojžíšovi řekl, viděl jsem tento lid, je to lid tvrdé šije. 10. Teď mě nech, ať proti ním vzplane můj hněv a skoncuj s nimi, z tebe však udělám veliký národ. 11. Mojžíš však prosil Hospodina svého Boha o shovívavost. Hospodine, proč plane tvůj hněv proti tvému lidu, který si vyvedl velikou silou a pevnou rukou z egyptské země? 12. Proč mají Egypťané říkat, vyvedl je se zlým úmyslem, aby je v horách povraždil a na dobro je smetl z povrchu země? Upust od svého planoucího hněvu, dej se pohonout k lítosti nad zlem, jenž proti svému lidu zamýšlíš. 13. Nezapomeň se na Abrahama, na Izáka a na Izraele své služebníky, kterým si sám při sobě přísahal a vyhlásil. Rozmnožím vaše potomstvo jako nebeské hvězdy a celou tuto zemi. Jak jsem řekl, dám vašemu potomstvu aby jí navěky město v dědictví, aby jí navěky mělo v dědictví. 14. Hospodin se dal pohnout k lítosti nad zlem, o němž mluvil, že je dopustil na svůj lid.
Thank you. Can any of you relate to God in this text and God's reaction to his community? Gafla? Anyone else? You all have these perfect communities who you never feel frustrated or angry with?
Tak I'll speak in Czech. Já bych řekla, že vlastně já si myslím, že to asi není nikdo, kdo tady sedíme a pracujeme s komunitami, že máme někdy pocit, že lidé jsou nevděční, že my pořád vymýšlíme ty úžasné programy a do noci vlastně sedíme nad všemi těmi přípravami a trávíme dlouhý čas tím, že organizujeme jiné lidi a děláme to zadarmo jako dobrovolníci a tak. A já musím říct, že tenhle pocit mám velmi často a že vlastně mě hodně pomohlo umenšit tenhle ten pocit, když moje dcera přišla do první třídy. A že jsem si vlastně uvědomila, že já jsem jako taky třeba někdy frustrovaný člověk na té druhé straně toho vlastně konzumenta toho programu. A že když za mnou někdo přichází a říká mi, že je nespokojený, takže někdy, že je vlastně strašně, aspoň pro mě jako velmi osobně, velmi důležité překročit tu první fázi toho pocitu, ty jsi nevděčný člověk a měl by si přijít a říct, ty seš tak dobrá, ty si tady organizuješ tady všechny ty úžasné věci a je tu košer maso, na který jsme přišli, že to tak není, že ten člověk, který mi to říká zpátky, mi dává nějakou informaci. Někdy mi ji třeba dává způsobem, který si myslím, že je velmi nevhodný, jako třeba když si Židé udělali toho bíčka, takže třeba někdy ten člověk na mě křičí nebo je velmi nepříjemný, ale že vlastně jako je velmi důležité, že já jsem ten profesionál, že já si z toho mám vyabstrahovat to, že ten člověk mi třeba něco, jak říká nehezkým způsobem, ale říká mi něco, co můžu použít. Je to vlastně jedna z nejtěžších věcí, kterou myslím, že jakoby ten židovský profesionál musím dělat, ale bylo pro mě velmi poučné vlastně sama být taky v situaci, kdy se mi něco nelíbilo a uvědomit si, že vlastně nějakou informaci, kterou dostávám, tak že ta informace může být hodnotná.
Thank you. So I think what you've described is the perfect door opener, right? When someone comes to us angry, that's the best time to take them for that coffee and to have that one-to-one and to find out where their dissatisfaction and anger comes from. It might be that we're not getting it right, and it might also be that it's connected to their self-interest. What is it that they're really looking for? What are we not meeting? But also, as we heard earlier, maybe there's negative experiences that are influencing their journey and are writing their story that we somehow need to transform, and we can't do that until we've heard their story, until we've listened to that part of them that tells us who they are and that helps them feel that they have been heard. When someone has been heard, it takes away the anger, and they can then offer their feedback in the beautiful way that Teresa suggested, which in the UK we call the feedback sandwich, which means you say something good, then you offer the criticism, and then you sandwich it with something, you finish with something good again, right? When you remember to tell people the things they got right, as well as the things that they got wrong, it changes how they feel and how they hear. It doesn't mean we can't say the difficult things, and we must say the difficult things, but it's how do we couch it. My boss, who is Rabbi Laura Jana Klausner, she's the senior rabbi to Reform Judaism in the UK. Every time we have a meeting of any kind, whether it's one-to-one with me or a group meeting, she brings a little statue of an elephant. And at the end of the meeting, she puts the elephant on the table. And I don't know if this is a Czech phrase, but she asks us to say, okay, we've had our meeting, what's the elephant in the room? Is that a Czech phrase? Okay, so in English, the phrase "there's an elephant in the room" means there's something really big and obvious sitting in the corner that everyone's ignoring. There's something that we need to have said and we haven't. So Laura gives us permission to name the thing that's bothering us that we haven't said. Okay, and when we're growing trust and we're growing communities, giving people that opportunity to be negative is also really helpful, and the opportunity to say the thing that they haven't had permission to say. And sometimes it's that moment at the end of the meeting where they say what's really important, and that you get to the crux of what really needs to say. So inviting it is also really powerful. Going back to Exodus, what happens to change God's anger, to change the situation? Why are the Israelites not wiped out once again? Daniel, I'm bringing the microphone.
The reminding of that what the Egyptians would say. So it would be like, dear Hashem, it will be Hil Hashem if you kill them, because it's what will the whole world say? You are the Almighty God. That's A. And B, please remember the promises to Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and please forgive them for our forefathers.
So
give them a chance, because again another chance, because they are descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov.
So Moses is using what he knows about the things that God cares about to help transform God's decision, right? Moses knows that this history is important to God, that these promises were important to God, that there is a relationship there that he can build on and use. It's a brilliant kind of Torah example of how we have, through our relationships and deep knowledge of one another, the power to make change. Okay. Before we run out of time before lunch, one last text, which is probably more familiar in terms of how we use it in the community. That's Exodus 18, Shmot Yudchet. We've read it not so long ago in Shul. Would someone like to read the translation or the Hebrew for us now? Maybe Daniel, because he's holding the microphone.
Hebrew.
Maybe the Czech. You can read the Hebrew if you want, and everyone can follow in the Czech, whatever you like.
The Hebrew is more familiar for the text because I'm Balkore.
Okay. Maybe you can lane it for us.
Okay, Ashkenaz or modern?
Whatever you want.
Vayhi mimochoros, vayeshev Moshe lishpoit es ho'om. Okay, so
that was beautiful, though. Thank you.
let's use this Spanish. ויעמוד העם אל משה מן הבוקר עד הערב, וירא חותן משה את כל אשר הוא עושה לעם, ויאמר מה הדבר הזה אשר אתה עושה לעם, מדוע אתה יושב לבדך, וכל העם ניצב עליך מן הבוקר עד ערב, ויאמר משה לחותנו, כי יבוא אלי העם לדרוש אלוהים, כי יהיה להם דבר בא אלי, ושפטתי בין איש ובין רעהו, והודעתי את חוקי האלוהים ואת תורתיו. ויאמר חותן משה אליו, לא טוב הדבר אשר אתה עושה, נבול תיבול גם אתה, גם העם הזה אשר עמך, כי כבד ממך הדבר, לא תוכל עשוהו לבדך, אתה שמע בקולי, יעצך Vihi Elohim imach, heye ata la'am, mul ha-Elohim, veheveta ata et hadevarim el ha-Elohim, vehodata lahem, vehodata lahem. את הדרך ילכו בה ואת המעשה אשר יעשון ואתה תחזה מכל העם אנשי חיל יראי אלוהים אנשי אמת שונאי בצע ושמת עליהם שרי אלפים שרי מאות שרי 50 ושרי 10 ושפטו את העם בכל עת והיה כל הדבר הגדול יביאו אליך וכל הדבר הקטון ישפטו הם והקל מעליך ונשאוהו איתך אם את הדבר הזה תעשה וציווך אלוהים ויכולת עמוד וגם כל העם הזה על מקומו יבוא בשלום.
Chazak Baruch. Okay. So presumably those who needed to were following in the Czech or the English. In terms of community management, this might be a more familiar text, or it might not be, I don't know. Yitro, Moshe's father-in-law, is the first management consultant, really, here. What is he suggesting about how things work?
Dividing the power.
Exactly.
Why?
Because you can't do it all by yourself. Like you're working for, like, it's not only about you, it's about the community and how it should work. So if it only stands on you, it's also, well, in this part, I think the most stressed part is that it's bad for you. You can't manage it. Just, you can't do it for a longer time. And that's still true now.
So we often see, particularly among, I think, Jewish community professionals, this sense of this all lies on me. And if I don't do this, it won't happen. And that might be true, but if you always only do it on your own, ultimately it won't continue anyway, because you are one person. If Daniel is the only Baal Koreh in the whole of Prague, that's amazing as long as you have Daniel. But if he doesn't train others to do what he does, it will end. If no one else can do what you do, you're creating a problem for the community. And you will burn out. And that doesn't help anyone. Rabbis are notorious for this, but I think other professionals also fall into this trap of this feeling of I'm needed and I must do everything. If you don't protect yourself, you become useless. If you don't make time for you, for your family, for your Judaism, then you burn out and become unable to do the task which is so important. But this is also about how we ensure that community is owned by everyone. That when power is devolved through systems that function, everyone feels ownership and everyone feels a part of the whole. And you can only involve people when you know what their strengths are, when you know what their interests are, and you can only know that when you get to know them. So we're back again to this relationality, getting to know everyone, getting to understand how they can commit. Sometimes it's a gut instinct with a person. Rabbi Eli Kampfer wrote a book about independent communities starting up in America. It's a big movement 10 years ago. And he writes about finding the right volunteers. Finding people who have the skills, but also the passion and the excitement to put into parts of the community. And sometimes it's just a gut that, that person's going to be the best gabbai and that person's going to be the best one to work with kids. And the person themselves might not even know that that's what they wanted to do, but because you've listened and you've understood what motivates them, you know where they're going to fit into the bigger picture. So it doesn't mean that Moses stops doing everything, but he has a support system that allows him to lead the things he needs to lead on and lets other people lead on the things that are important to them and that they can contribute to the community through doing. So part of the trick is for you to understand in yourself what are the things that are important to you to focus on so that you will enjoy being a leader and you will enjoy being a teacher. And you'll be giving the things that you are best at and that you gain from doing. And then discovering who has the self-interest to do it with you. To learn the things that you love and to do it with you. To share the power and to do other tasks as well. When we are able to do that core work of understanding our own motivations and marrying them to other people's self-interest, we start to be able to put people before programs. We start to be able to understand what is going to bring excitement and love and meaning and comfort and joy and all those things that we want our communities to be and to do so that they have a future. Because if we do things just because they have to happen, they probably won't carry on happening. And if we do things just because we're good at them, they're going to finish when we stop doing them. We always sort of keep an eye on what's important now and listening to the fact that people's motivations and needs will also change over time. So doing these, we read it a little bit earlier in one of the earlier texts, that it's not something that finishes once we've done one round of listening. That's the starting point. But we have to keep listening and we have to keep responding. In the UK, there's something called the United Reformed Church. So people often call us Reformed Jews. And I always tell people I'm not a Reformed Jew. Because it's not finished. This is an ongoing process. Judaism is an ongoing process that constantly asks us to respond to where we are and who we are, and to make Judaism and the stories of Torah be real and be alive for us as individuals. That's the Jewish textual process, right? The Talmud is constantly asking this question, what does this mean for us here and now today? How do we do this? How do we make it real? And if we stop asking those questions, we stop being responsive. So in the last 5 minutes before lunch, we're going to start getting ready for the afternoon, when you can all start to focus a little bit more on the specific struggles that you are dealing with in your communities, specific challenges or issues. I'm going to just take a minute to lay all these pictures on the floor, and then I will come back to you. You can do some. That's a good idea. You can lay some down. So this is a great activity that you can. This is a great activity you can use for lots of different questions, because art allows people to interpret things in a whole host of different ways. What I want you to do is find a picture that in its own way says something to you about whatever it is that you're struggling with or you find challenging at the moment in your community. Again, it might not be, we don't have to look at it and instantly know what your challenge is, but it's a chance for you to think about what represents or says something important about what you're struggling with in your community. So this is a collection of pictures that I've built up over many years, and you can ask all sorts of questions to have people respond to. It could be about how they feel about prayer, what do you think about God, or what are the things you're struggling with, as we've done this morning. So I'm going to ask you to leave your postcard on your chair, and maybe we'll start with this in the afternoon before handing over to Marianne. And it'll be a way for you to explain, either to each other or to all of us, what's the thing that you really want to focus on for transformation. I was wondering if anyone would pick the one synagogue that's from Prague in my collection. There you go. So thank you for learning with me this morning. We're going to head off to lunch. I don't know where, and Gaffna's just, there she is. So I'll hand over to Gaffna and we'll come back after lunch.
Thank you very much to Debbie for a very interesting workshop. And I'll switch into Czech. Tak já se informace o obědě vám dám v češtině, aby to bylo úplně všem jasné, protože jídlo, to všichni víme, je základ každé úspěšné židovské akce. A bude i to maso, a dokonce i ti, kteří to maso nejedí, tak right. A prosím, potom je vraťte. Všechny ty pohlednice, ale zpátky k tomu jídlu. Tak, jíme v King Solomonu. Pokud asi tak, jak tady jsme, tak všichni víme, kde to je. Kdyby to náhodou někdo nevěděl, tak se prosím k někomu připojte. A stejně tak, jako jsem říkala včera, nejdůležitější informace o obědě je, trvá 1 hodinu a vrátíme se sem v 1 hodinu. Pokaždé, když pořádáme seminář, vrátíme se v 1:15 a schválně, jestli naše skupina zvládne vrátit se v 1 hodinu. Tak k jídlu je... Ano, je tady pořád někdo z OVK, takže kdybyste se chtěli vrátit třeba dříve, je to možné a zároveň nikdo jiný sem nepřijde, takže klidně tady můžete nechat všechny svoje věci. K jídlu je masová rolka z brambory a vegetariánská varianta je špagety pomodoro, pak je hráškový krém předtím a potom je jablečný štrůdl. Tak a každý má k tomu ještě nápoj zdarma. A abych nezapomněla, ještě jedna malá věc, paní Feiglová, která sedí tady, jenom chce ještě krátkou informaci ke knížkám, které přinesla, tak jestli můžete ještě jednu minutku počkat.
Já začnu tím nejzajímavějším. Zde je možno zakoupit za 150 korun v knihkupectví Za více. Je to knížka vzpomínek mého otce na jeho rodinu, takže je to vlastně historie židovské rodiny, dost typická, myslím, od konce 19. století do konce 20. století. Je to s humorem a sebeironií, je to taková krásná úsměvná knížka a poslední kapitole já píšu o tom, jak to v té židovské rodině bylo, když se rodiče vrátili z lodě z koncentráku a pan doktor Zéman tam má doslov, jak to skutečně v té lodi vypadalo. Tak kdybyste chtěli. Jo, všichni se mohou podívat, ano. Je to tady na...
A ještě, když mám chvilku vaší pozornosti, tak to jsem se teda zachovala právě naprosto nekomunitně a omlouvám se za to, já bych ráda přivítala tady na našem semináři Marian Zís, která dorazila krátce před koncem té první části a Marian s námi bude v té druhé části a povede část toho odpoledního programu. Tak jenom abyste věděli, kdo je ta krásná zrzavá žena, která s námi půjde na oběd, pokud se neznáte. Tak a teď už opravdu teda můžeme na ten oběd.